everybody, and welcome to more Seduce Me to the Demon War. I'm Gina, aka the Chu-Chu. We're hopefully going to finish up Sam's route today. Here we go. We had some serious shit go down. We found out that this voice was a dragon, which I think is pretty badass if you ask me, because dragons are always badass. Shalties is here, Fraggies is here. They're whining because they're so good that I don't have ranks for them, so I made them more ranks. Because you ask and you shall receive. I've given them all the things. Alrighty, so let us jump back in and continue. However, as I woke, I was happily in the arms of the man I loved. Despite the tired fog over my vision, I could sense that the man who was holding me was the true Sam. The way he held me gave it all away. As he pulled my body close to him, I giggled, knowing Sam was awake. I know you're awake.
No, you don't, you doofus.
Nice, Sam. I laughed and kissed his nose softly, causing Sam to open his eyes. As he gazed into my eyes and smiled, I felt my heart completely swell in joy. I had almost forgotten about the day ahead. All I wanted to do was stay in bed with him a little longer.
Morning.
Morning. Sam lazily leaned forward and kissed me before pulling me to his chest and sitting us both up.
Come on. Time to get up.
Do we have to? As I asked, I could sense a new determination from Sam. Something about him seemed confident despite having just woken up. I tilted my head and placed my hands on his shoulders, curious as to why that was. Yes, you could have all the cheese with your wine, Shelties. Also, like, fucking 12 other goddamn... I don't know. I gotta find a better way to rename those, rags. Whatever. Hey, what's got you so energized? Sam turned his head and looked in my direction, giving me a surprised look himself.
Huh? What do you mean? I'm always energized.
Well, that's good to hear.
Oh, Sam and I looked over to the door to suddenly see Diana leaning against the archway holding 2 plates of food. I was surprised she was able to carry them. Both plates were piled with food that looked absolutely delicious. Sam and I practically salivated at the sight before Sam shook his head and glared at Diana.
You ever learn how to knock?
Well, we have a lot to do, so I figured knocking would only waste precious time.
Oh, come on.
My apologies.
Knocking is knocking, lady. Diana walked over at last and handed us our plates before stepping back and crossing her arms. Sam began to chow down as I took the slower approach to eating what I was given with a laugh.
So, are you prepared for your test, dear?
That made me stop and look up at Diana. She knew that I was next? She already devoted herself to the dragon before, so it wasn't surprising, but maybe she knew what exactly was in store for me. I couldn't be sure. Do you know what my test is? Diana nodded as Sam looked up to see her answer. I gulped, now a bit worried. Can you tell me?
Unfortunately, no. I cannot. If I could, I would, dear.
I actually kind of believe that. I grimaced, looking to the fireplace and knowing that the dragon was probably watching. I half expected him to answer for Diana, but he didn't speak. My mind began to fill with ideas of what it could be about. What was I going to be tested on? How was it going to go down? Would I have to fight? All the possibilities lingered in my thoughts as Sam finished his food.
Hey.
I looked to Sam, feeling him rub my back gently with his strong hand. I felt some comfort in the gesture and more from the smile on his face.
You'll be fine. I believe in you.
Well, thank you, Sam. I assume we are to kiss him. Yes. I love that little happy face of his, by the way. Can we just look at that happy face? I was happy to know that Sam believed in me and supported me. I gave him a loving peck on his lips, causing him to stare wide-eyed with a blush. I had to giggle at the sight while Diana rolled her eyes and let out a groan. Diana, however, looked to the fireplace.
I will say this, though. It should be easy for you.
Really? Huh? It should be easy. Diana nodded before turning around and looking over her shoulder to maintain eye contact with me.
Yes, that is, if you believe in your love.
Oh, here. Okay, well then it's easy peasy. I stared wide-eyed at Diana before she turned and walked away, leaving me and Sam alone. I grew curious and concerned, but I had to let it go for now. The test was apparently tonight, so I had to wait. I expected today's training to be full of fighting and brawling, just like the last time. However, as I left the castle, I spotted Sergeant sitting on the ground looking down at a bowl that had multiple lit sticks of incense burning in it. The colors seemed to mesh into the smoke that rose from their lit ends, blending to a dull gray color before fading into the air. It was almost mystical to watch. Oh, you still don't have sound, Freggy? That sucks. I'm sorry, honey. As I walked towards Sergeant, I noticed that he seemed entranced by the lit incense bowl, focused on the smoke emitting from it. What had him entranced? Not wishing to disturb him, I stopped on the other side of the bowl, sitting down very slowly and looking into the bowl as well. The incense sticks had different scents that occasionally clashed or blended together in harmony. I could barely make out each earthy tone and every spice that the smells emitted. Just letting their scents filter into my nose made me slightly dizzy. What was this?
Men's itinerary.
Oh. Huh?
It's a test. Every brute demon goes through it when they are ready to be an adult. Mostly, female brutes do it before they become hunters, and males do it before they become guardians.
I looked to Sergeant as he finally turned his eyes up to look at me. He had a stern look in his eyes, which made me nervous. What did this test have in store?
Only those who can master their rage will live through this test.
Oh, goody, yay. The potential to die is always a fun thing to deal with. And there was the rum. I became a little panicked. It had only been 2 days of training. How was I going to be able to pass this test, whatever it was, and live? As Sergeant saw the fear obviously stretch across my expression, he glared harder.
Are you doubting yourself already?
No. I really wasn't sure what to think. Did Sergeant really think I was ready to do this test, whatever it was? I barely got the hang of rage energy. Sergeant shook his head and let out a sigh.
If you're not sure, then don't bother. Just leave. I'm not going to waste my time.
His words stung, but I knew that he was serious. This was my chance to show him and myself that I was strong enough to protect myself, at least for this war. I just needed to swallow my fear and do as he said. But what if I wasn't ready? What if this test proved to be fatal? What if I die without having a chance to survive? I didn't know what I was walking into, which is why we're going to save the game. We're going to do it. I had to try. Oh, men's itinerary! Achievement unlocked! Yay! I had to try. I had to. If this was going to help me, then I had to do my best. I looked to Sergeant once more and shook off the fear from my expression, showing him that I was ready. Sergeant grinned a bit before gathering some dirt in his hand and tossing it over the bowl and incense. As the dirt collided into the bowl, a red spark flashed and burst from it, causing me to shut my eyes to block the visual impact. After a second, I opened my eyes again to see what had happened. A large red flame sat in the mouth of the bowl, dissolving the incense into it and leaving nothing but the licking tongues of the fire. It seemed to burn immensely, not showing any sign of dying.
Reach into the flame and touch the bottom of the bowl with 2 fingers.
Okay? I took a moment to absorb what he said. My thoughts instantly wanted to say no, but something told me it was something I could do without getting hurt. With a breath, I slowly lifted my hand and stretched it towards the fire, feeling the heat grow against my skin as the distance shortened. My fingertips barely caressed the flame before I almost violently pushed my hand forward. To my surprise, I felt no pain from the action, watching the fire dance around my skin, but only feeling its warmth. I let out a soft, shaky sigh before continuing forward and touching the bottom of the bowl with my fingers. I could barely feel an ooze-like texture around my nails and fingertips, but I kept focused on following Sergeant's instructions.
You're not going to go through the full test. As a human, you wouldn't survive. You'll be getting a small taste of it, enough to show me that you're strong enough to defend yourself.
Fair enough. I nodded in understanding. Sergeant continued.
What you're about to taste is fucking disgusting, but you will not spit any of it out. Understand?
Oh, God. I would fail in a minute. I nodded again.
Good. Now take your hand out of the flame.
I obeyed and watched my hand emerge from the flame with ease. Covering my fingertips was a blood-colored liquid, slowly dribbling down my fingers and onto my palm and knuckles. I stared at it, trying not to let my mind overthink what I was about to do.
When you're ready, put your fingers in your mouth and swallow that mixture.
My mind began to fight. What was I doing? This was getting really odd. However, as my thoughts tried to assemble a reason why this was wrong, my senses became overwhelmed. What? The air around me tightened, and suddenly the ground began to shift and rumble, almost like I was sitting on a waterbed. I felt my nerves dancing and wriggling beneath my skin, making me slightly nauseous. Was the smell getting to me? The only description I could coherently think of was that I felt like I was getting high. My mind was slowly numbing, and my body was rocking at the sensations coursing through it. I had to hurry. I instantly put my fingers in my mouth and quickly began to clean the concoction off my fingers with my tongue. Oh, Sergeant was right. The taste was absolutely vomit-worthy. It was a mixture of ash and burnt mold. Oh, God. If I can imagine actually trying it, the taste was like eating a wad of aged cigarettes. Oh. However, I shut my eyes and barreled through the taste, making sure to swallow it down. I could feel the effects of the concoction fuse and spread through my mouth and throat, zipping through the nerves and body. It was like eating fire. As I opened my eyes, however, I was no longer in the training grounds, but in a purple forest. I looked around, confused and lost as to what was going on, as the trees swayed and shifted like apparitions. gosh. What was happening to me? I slowly stood and looked around, trying to take everything in. This was completely new, and I found myself becoming frightened. Where was I? My body suddenly began to shiver at the sound of the familiar voice. I turned my head to look and froze at the sight of who was in the space with me. Of course! Standing beside me was the Demon Lord, mighty and terrifying as I imagined him to be up close. His face was dark and menacing as he gazed into my soul. His teeth were even more horrifying as he bared them at me animalistically. However, I could hear Sergeant's voice echo into space.
Your test stands before you, human. The one standing in the way from you going home is the fuckface known as the Demon Lord.
I called one of my best friends fuckface. As the mere mention of his name, I became furious. This was the monster that was keeping me from going home. This was the bastard who wanted to hurt me and bring the boys back here, most likely to punish them or force them to take the throne.
Now, beat him down!
Yo, let's punch him in the goddamn face. I felt instant fury ignite within my core, making waves of rage and anger run through each vein in my body. My muscles tensed and my fists were ready to fly at my opponent. The time had come to prove myself. The Demon Lord came swinging, arching a large blade in my direction. I swiftly dodged and quickly began to assess the situation. He was armed and he was as muscular as Sergeant, if not more. Another swing, another dodge. However, in this realm, I could barely make out the black aura around the Demon Lord's body. Most likely, the test was crafted not to allow me to see the weakness and energy in my opponent. Smart. I had to adjust and use my visible sight. There had to be something. His weapon was exceedingly perfect, and his grip seemed to be protected as well. I jumped away as the Demon Lord lunged at me, swinging his blade at me to slice me in half. He had a weapon, I did not. He was built, I was not. How was I going to do this? The situation slowly began to dawn on me, causing the fury in my body to lightly shudder in weakness. Shelty says go for the dick. That would be a smart move. Was I even ready to do this? My mind began to flicker through images of my family, my friends, my fiancé. I was fighting for them. I was fighting for me, my freedom, my own need for revenge. I had to knock away any doubt in my mind and remind myself of why I was there. It was all because of him. I quickly ran at the Demon Lord, my vision becoming as red as blood. As the Demon Lord prepared to stance, I raised my leg and knocked it against his elbow, bending it in the opposite direction and forcing him to drop his weapon. With a hateful snarl, the Demon Lord raised a fist of his own and rammed it into my cheek, causing me to fly back and skid across the ground. Despite the pain, I quickly scrambled back onto my feet, eyeing him with a deadly glare. I had to win this. I felt my hand pulse, tensing and becoming solid as rock at my side. Blood dripped from the side of my mouth, but I didn't care. I was going to end this. With a final battle cry, I rushed forward and raised my fist behind me, ready to slam it into the Demon Lord's face. My fist was met with his, causing us both to deadlock fist to fist. Fire and electricity bounced between our hands as we pushed against each other. I snarled to let my rage fuel into each finger, forcing his fist back. I didn't want to lose. I wasn't going to lose. I was going to beat him down and win this fight. The Demon Lord's fist tried to push back, but failed as I pressed forward, knocking his fist away from us and leaving him open. At last, I let out an angry yell as I brought my arm back and slammed it into his face hard. I stared at his face to mold over my fist at the impact before he rebounded off of it and fell to the floor. His illusion was much weaker than the real Demon Lord, but I didn't give a damn. This thing was going to feel the anger I had stored in my body. I jumped onto his chest, pinning his arms to his sides at my knees, and began to pummel his face with my fists over and over. Soon enough, his face became unrecognizable and covered in blood. As it occurred, however, I barely noticed the world around me slowly change back to normal. It was only until the body below me turned into a training dummy that I had to let it sink in hard. What? The rage within my body became quickly extinguished as I stared at the broken straw and cloth beneath my body. Small scratches decorated my fist from the friction of the dummy. And I became lost as ever. Hold on. Priority interrupt. People blowing up my phone. Hold on. Okay. I was fighting the Demon Lord. How did it become a dummy? I am so professional, Shelties. I can't help it. The people in my life don't understand that I'm streaming. I love them to death, but it is what it is. As the sound of a slow applause, I turned my head to see Sergeant with a smirk on his face, clapping at an apparent job well done.
I gotta admit, I'm impressed. You're probably the first human to pass that test.
Of course we are. It took a moment to sink in. I was in the midst of a test and I'd passed, just like that? I became extremely proud of myself, utter joy rushing through my body and causing me to jump up. Yeah, all right! Sergeant laughed as I pumped my fist in the air in pride.
Don't overwork yourself, or...
I barely heard him finish his sentence as I suddenly became dizzy and collapsed to the ground, immediately worn out.
What the hell did you do?
Oh, here we go.
I was training her.
And that requires a means intervenire?
Are you judging my training methods?
I'm judging your common sense.
I could barely understand what was going on around me before I opened my eyes. Despite my vision being blurred, I could see Diana above me, feeling her knees beneath my head, and Sergeant on the other side, arms crossed. Diana's hand was petting through my hair where I felt waves of light energy pass over my head and into the rest of my body. It felt calming and comforting after using so much rage energy, and I had to hold back a moan from escaping me. As my vision began to clear up, I could see Diana and Sergeant scowling at each other.
She is a human. That kind of mental exertion could have killed her.
She lived.
Barely!
I could barely open my mouth before Diana gently lowered my head to the ground and stood, walking around my body and marching at Sergeant.
That was an unforgivably reckless choice. How am I supposed to trust you with an army if I can't trust you to take care of one human?
Yo, you two need to stop bickering immediately.
Watch it, Succubus. I trained our men well.
It doesn't mean anything if you don't have the sense to see the error of this choice.
Suddenly, Sergeant swung a fist towards Diana, only to be blocked by her forearm with insane reaction speed. Barely a second that passed as a dark purple flame engulfed Diana's free hand while it rammed into Sergeant's stomach. Oh, here we go again with the fucking black aura. Before my eyes, Sergeant was sent back flying and slammed into a tree, falling at its base. Diana, however, became engulfed with the black and purple flame as the scowl on her face contorted to one I recognized from the human world.
How dare you attack me? I am the one who honored your people, and you have the gall to turn and strike at me. Where does your loyalty lie?
What the hell? What was happening?
You truly thought you could hurt me. I've been fighting the Demon Lord himself for over 10 years. You're nothing compared to him.
Schultes, are we gonna side with the others this time? Yeah, I think this is a good playthrough to side with the others this time if that comes up again. Sergeant looked up at Diana with a pained glare of his own as Diana turned and took a single step away from him.
I will overlook that act of treason this once, but know your place, brute.
I still don't see a reason to not trust her, so... As Diana's face turned away from Sergeant, I could see a look of change in Diana's eyes, going from pure arrogance to sudden realization and regret. However, she shut her eyes and let out a silent sigh as she took another step away from us. With that, Diana walked away, her flame-like aura completely gone from her body. Sergeant, however, didn't move and simply watched until she entered the castle and vanished from sight. As she did, Sergeant let out a sigh. I slowly sat up, taking in what happened. What was wrong with Diana? Why did she act like that? Why was Sergeant so on the offensive? I looked over at my trainer to see him slowly stand. As I did, I noticed a very heavily burned mark where Diana had punched him. Are you okay?
I'll be fine.
I could tell that Diana had gotten under his skin. I was concerned as to why Diana acted the way she did, but Sergeant stood and shook his head. But as Sergeant stood and shook his head, he looked at me.
You all right?
I nodded, feeling much better than I had before. Diana's magic must have healed me from whatever the test's effects were. I quickly stood up and grinned. So what now? Well, you know what, Schultes? He almost killed us. I mean, I don't blame her. Sergeant took a moment to look at me, but I knew that I had to take my mind off of Diana to get back into properly training. I wasn't mad at him about the test. It gave me a good punching bag. He let out a small laugh and uncrossed his arms.
You should have been born a demon. You've got the will to be one.
Wow! Sergeant! I couldn't help but feel flattered at the compliment. As I smiled, Sergeant walked up over to the dummy I was beating on earlier and set it up.
You proved yourself by passing the test. Now, we'll take the time to master what skills you have.
I walked over and stood in front of the dummy, ready for his instruction. I was able to defend myself and fight. That was the goal of this entire process. I spent the rest of the day sparring the dummy, Dandelier, and even Sergeant himself to sharpen my skills to make them better. I was completely exhausted by the time I went sent back to my room. As I marched back to my room, I was stopped by Sam. I stared at him as he leaned against the door to our room as if he had been waiting for me for a while.
Hey.
Hey. I knew this could only mean one thing. My test was waiting for me. I pressed my lips together, nervous but knowing that I had to go through it regardless of how I felt. Diana's words began to flood back into my mind as I took Sam's hand and gave it a squeeze. Sam squeezed my hand back, nodding, and led the way from our bedroom towards the war room where Diana was waiting for us. As Diana locked her sights on us, she let out a sigh and gestured to the table where a large conglomerate of items were placed and presented. Sam halted and stopped, staring at the table in absolute shock. Here's the test! Are we going to do the demon marriage or not? That's the test! It's the demon marriage! I'm calling it now! I, however, merely grew confused. On the table was an assortment of single flowers, each of a different color and type. They were formed in a magic circle pattern, but there was no magic to be seen.
When did you...
Hush, this is for her.
Sam instantly shut his mouth as I looked to Sam in confusion. He knew what this was? I turned to Diana, completely lost.
Dear, do you know what I've prepared here?
I stared at the table, unsure of how to discern it. A couple of ideas came to mind, but I didn't want to be wrong if this was part of the test. Sam knew what it was too, given the strong reaction from him. Could it have been... a demon marriage ritual! Calling it! That was it! It had to have been it! Why else would Sam react so strangely? It had been on his mind, and now it was staring me dead in the face. Diana nodded, gesturing to the flowers. Called it!
This is a marriage ritual. Freshly blossomed flowers, holding peak-worthy magical essence, arranged in a magic circle, are part of what a binding ritual needs to happen.
Cool. Part? Diana nodded and looked to the table.
The other part is a precious item forged between two souls to bind them together.
I couldn't believe it. This was my test? There was no way I was ready for this, but here I was staring at a setup that just screamed, go through with it. We're totally ready for it. Don't even doubt yourself, Anderson. Part of me was angry and aggravated. I had to go through this for some stupid dragon's power. This was something Sam and I were supposed to discuss together. Now it felt like an arranged agreement. What was I going to do? The test was obviously going to make me go through with this for the sake of Sam, but I still wasn't ready. Soul binding seemed very heavy, and as much as I loved Sam, I needed to be 100% clear. Sam stepped forward and glared at Diana.
We're not doing this.
Pardon?
Ooh.
You heard me. We're not going through with this.
Wow, Sam! I stared at Sam wide-eyed. What? He didn't want to go through with it anymore? What was going on? I remembered clearly that he'd wanted to do it. Now he was against it? Sam looked at me and I could suddenly see the reason why buried in his eyes. He still wanted to, but not like this. I could tell he was throwing away something he desperately wanted for my own sake. Sam turned and grasped my shoulder, staring into my eyes.
I know that I want to do this. I want to do this more than anything. But you are more important to me than some dumb ritual. I will never let you force yourself to make this decision if you're nowhere near ready.
I felt like crying. This was exactly why I loved him. This was one of a million reasons why Sam was so important to me. My heart felt at ease looking into his eyes and letting rogue tears fall down my cheeks. It may have seemed like a simple thing, but to me this was important. I gently caressed Sam's cheek, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath my hand and thanking every deity I knew that I had him beside as mine. However, as Diana cleared her throat, we both turned to her in reaction. What really threw us off was seeing her cover her mouth, holding some sort of smirk that was peeking out between her fingers.
Who said anything about you going through with it?
Sam and I became dumbfounded. What? We didn't have to go through with it? Then why was it set up?
For fuck's sake, if you're messing with us...
Diana began to laugh hysterically, causing Sam to stop talking and become dumbfounded once again. What the hell was going on?
I knew it! I knew it!
What the fuck, Diana?
What the hell? I was beyond lost. As Diana continued to laugh, she curled over her stomach and covered her face, trying to catch her breath.
This was perfect! This was absolutely perfect!
Diana, what are you doing? Diana! Now I became frustrated. What was so funny about this? Diana finally stopped laughing, wiping her eyes from the tears that had formed from laughing so hard, and grinned at me and Sam.
I didn't set this up to make you two do it. That would ruin the point of the test.
Then what was the test? I became flustered, now mentally scrambled as to what was going on. As my body suddenly began to sink into the ground, however, I gasped and looked down, seeing a large purple pentagram pulling me and Sam into the floor.
Whoa!
Ah!
demon marriage lets you know where your soul partner is at all times. The test is that you find your husband without it.
Ah, I couldn't even fight back as I was engulfed by darkness at last. I couldn't tell how long I was trapped in that darkness. All I knew was that I was going to wake up and find Sam. As I opened my eyes, I had to adjust to bright light around me and the sound of nature in my ears. Ooh, pretty. I rubbed my eyes and found myself in a forest, laying underneath a large tree with burn marks across its bark. I could tell that this would be my starting place and my marker if I got lost, so while I felt terrible for the tree, I was thankful to have something to visually reference. So, this was my test. I had to find the man I loved without anything but my heart and my instincts. This was cheesy as hell, expecting someone to find someone else using the power of love. I loved Sam deeply, but I didn't know if it would be strong enough to guide me through a terrain I was unaware of to Sam, who could also have been wandering around looking for me. There were so many variables to consider. Hold on a second. Hold on. Ah, people. Still, this was a test for a reason. I had to figure this out. I cut my hands together and shouted, knowing his name would be a way to bring him to me. Almaris! The nearby birds around me fluttered wildly into the air in surprise at my shout, but Sam did not appear, obviously. What the hell? This was supposed to have worked. Something must have had him under holy magic or something to negate the demon summoning. Another part of the test. Guess I wasn't allowed to cheat. It was worth a try. Let's just go and find him. I started heading to the left of the tree's burn marks. It was better than no direction at all, and it was a start. Each step I took became one filled with haste. I wanted to find Sam soon, and I didn't want to laze about this. It felt like hours went by until I stopped and looked around, exhausted from walking so far at such a fast pace. I leaned against a nearby tree, catching my breath. How the hell am I going to find him? Something in my heart began to feel heavy. What if I wasn't able to find him? What if this was an impossible quest? I felt my body slide down the side of the tree, making me sit down at the base in fear. This couldn't be. Sadness and ache began to consume my thoughts. There was no way to track him, no way to find him at all in this place. I'd been searching forever, only hoping that I would find him and pray that he was alive when I did. My hands combed through my hair as I fought back tears. Please let me wake up if this is a dream. Please let me see him again.
Giving up so soon, my dear?
At Diana's voice, I suddenly gasped and looked up, only to find no one was around. I quickly stood and scanned the area, but alas, there were only trees around. Diana, I don't know what to do. How can I find him?
You have all of the means to find him. You're just not thinking it through.
I looked into the air, confused as ever. What did she mean? I didn't have anything but clothes I was wearing. Diana chuckled slightly.
Think. Besides his heart, what else did he give you as a token of his love?
As she said it, the answer came to my mind, replaying the night Sam proposed to me in the night sky. I looked to my hand, seeing the engagement ring Sam has given me resting on my finger, glistening in the light.
There we are. The other part of the marriage ritual.
Second part. This was...
Indeed. It seems he intended to ask you to be his in body, heart, and spirit.
My heart gave a hard and heated thump against my chest, agreeing with Diana's words. He had been prepared all along to ask me to be his, but wanted to at least give me what I wanted first before asking for what he wanted. I smiled, staring at the sparkling emeralds and diamonds on my ring, and finally feeling the magic pulse within it. Still, I was lost on how to use it. How will this help me? Diana chuckled once more, her voice quieter than before.
I can't give you all of the answers, dear. But at least you won't be lost anymore.
Her voice finally vanished into the air, leaving me alone once more. However, my focus was on my ring. I remembered clearly that this wasn't an ordinary ring, but one magically forged the night Sam proposed. Sam, I'm going to find you. I nodded and felt a wave of hope and courage rush through my body. I was ready now. I focused on the ring, trying to will it to give me a sign to hit anything to help me find Sam. As I stared into it, a word popped into my mind. Letting it loose, I could feel magic pulse into the air from around my body. Amor. That's a word for love. My head suddenly became wrapped in a green chain-shaped marking, sprouting from the base of my ring before jutting off my skin and flying forward through the air and deeper into the forest. I felt myself grinning from ear to ear. I was going to find him. I quickly burst into a sprint, following the ethereal chain that was leading me towards Sam, uncaring of the harsh breaths I was taking, or the pain that shot through my legs. I needed to keep going forward. All that mattered was that I had to keep moving forward. The chain twisted and turned around trees and often arched around obstacles for me, guiding me perfectly towards a thicker brush of wood. The amount of bushes and smaller trees began to grow the farther in I went, but I continued. Soon enough, I found myself walking towards the descending mouth of a cave, where a familiar brown-haired demon boy laid face down at its edge. Sam! I ran forward and slid onto my knees, lifting his head into my lap. Around his neck was a golden collar, which upon my touch vanished and caused Sam to stir from his comatose state.
What?
My heart began to swell as I stared down at him, tears welling up in my eyes. This was really him. He was safe here in my arms and I had found him, his emerald gaze bore into mine, still dazed from the sleep he was in. As he stared up at me, Sam lifted his hand and caressed my cheek, causing me to unconsciously nuzzle into it.
There you are.
Boy, you are going to let me kiss you. I couldn't help but repeat the first words he had ever said to me. They had engraved themselves into my mind and I was forever thankful for that day. I remember that. Yeah, his first words to her were, "Woman, you're going to let me kiss you." Those were the first words he ever said to her. Sam's lips curved into a smug smile, remembering the phrase perfectly.
Then hurry up and do it.
I grinned and bent down, capturing his lips with my own. My entire body felt complete as our lips touched. I didn't care if he took energy from me in it. I had found him.
Well done.
To our surprise, the voice didn't ring in our heads. The voice of the dragon echoed from the cave, causing me and Sam to separate and stare into the void.
You have proven to me the strength of your heart. Now, for the final test, Sam must prove
He hates that name. I instinctively gripped Sam tighter. We weren't going to be separated again, were we? Sam, however, slowly stood up, guiding me with him and glared into the darkness.
Hit me with your best shot. I'm ready.
A dark echoing chuckle reverberated from the cave, causing a sliver of fear to rush down my body. I was beyond nervous, but we had come this far. We were going to win his powers.
Step into the cave and face me. I will judge you.
The memories of my nightmare began to fill my head. What if it was a trick? What if the dragon killed Sam while he was in there? Despite my frightening thoughts, Sam stepped towards the cave, nodding.
You got it.
Every voice and nerve in my head screamed for me to stop him. I didn't want him to die. At the same time, this was a test. He had to do it. I was placing my heart on the table and hoping it wouldn't be ripped apart with a single blast. I believe yeah, that's all of the stuff that we need for the ending. So the rest of these choices are totally up to us. Well, we're gonna let him do it because this power could be useful as fuck. I had to trust him. He could do this. I watched as Sam walked into the cave, following behind until he vanished into the darkness. I stood once again between the light and the dark, waiting. Hold on one second, guys. Waiting. Moments of silence ran by, filling my body with anxiousness. Was he safe? Was he okay? Anderson's very anxious. At the sudden shout of a dragon's roar, I jumped and gripped to the cave wall, frightened to the core. It echoed into silence out of the mouth of the cave, and I became worried. What happened? What was going on? The faint echo of footsteps began to make their way towards me, despite me not being able to see into the dark. I hoped it was Sam. I prayed it was Sam unscathed. Indeed it is, and with new glowy eyes. As Sam finally appeared out of the darkness, I gasped, not seeing him at last, but when I saw his eyes. They were swirling with red and green flames along the whites of his eyes, and his emerald irises glowed in the shadows of the cave. Just from seeing him, I could tell that he had changed and had become much more powerful. Sam? Sam grinned at me, stepping up in front of me and placing a hand on my head.
Sup, you doofus?
I bit my lip and shook my head, pounding a fist into his chest before hugging him to me tightly.
Whoa. Hey, it's all right. I'm right here.
Thank God you are.
May your battle be won, Lord of Dragons.
Yo! If you're gonna call him Lord of Dragons, he's basically the fucking Dovahkiin, okay? We're marrying the Dovahkiin. That's exactly what's happening. I approve. I looked over Sam's shoulder into the darkness, seeing the faint outline of a large dragon's head fade away before my eyes. What the? Lord of Dragons? Before Sam could answer me, a light burst into the air, causing us to grip onto each other and shut our eyes.